Hi. Yeah, I'm Nerv. This is going to be a little bit different than my usual videos, but hey, if it works, it works. I might even make more like it, who knows. But yeah, since my last build did not end too horribly, I thought it could be fun to go over in a little bit more detail than I usually do. That's the Admiral cast on crit character. And this is going to be a full guide to that, basically. We're going to go over everything. We're going to go over gearing, passive tree, how to min-max the build, some of the crafting that's not just basic rares, so I'll show you guys that, which if you haven't, by the way, seen the first video, you should go watch that. I'll leave a link. It's good. It goes over like the mechanics, some of the choices that we made, why we do things the way we do, and yeah, it's actually just a fun video. Proud of that one. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at gear, and we'll start with the uniques that the build uses. Admiral is kind of like the crux of the build. It's the mechanic that we build around. It's not a very expensive chest. You don't need a 6-link actually. In my variant of the build, you could get away with a 4-link and 2 extra sockets. This is really cheap. There is some debate whether or not this is better than like a Malagaro's ring if you wanted to apply elemental equilibrium that way. However, you would have to use like different support spells. You'd have to use like a weird support spell rotation, and you'd only be able to use it on single target. I don't know. I think the Admiral is great quality of life for any build that wants to use elemental equilibrium, especially on like your main attack. For Helm, we use Azanith's Chant. We use this to trigger all of our support spells. Getting an enchanted one of these that has an enchant that you want for your build can be difficult. When I found this one, it was an Azanith's Circle or Mark, an unupgraded one. It was the only one in existence for the league at that moment in time, and I had to do the prophecy myself. So finding the enchant can be hard, but when you buy one of these, just make sure the attack speed roll is good. That's really the only requirement here. Quiver is the signal fire. Important mod here is the 35% Fizz's extra fire damage. Make sure that's as high as you can get it. Don't splurge for a corrupted one. You can get corrupted ones with Fizz's extra fire as well. Don't splurge for a corrupted one until you already have like a perfect explicit one, because yeah, you'd be wasting money otherwise. If you want to drop like 20x on a quiver, go ahead. It would be a nice upgrade though. I would like it, but again, super expensive for a corrupted one. The bow is the only like non-standard rare on the build. Everything else is just kind of meh. To go about crafting a bow like this is actually relatively simple. You just grab yourself a base like an 83 or 86 spine, assassin, or Maraketh bow. Those are the 3 bases you want to use. Spine has the best attack time. Maraketh has move speed, which is really nice quality of life. And then, of course, Assassin is just big crit multi, which can be nice. But we're using Spine for quality of life now. I'm crafting a an Assassin for later, as soon as I 6-link it. But to craft one of these, use a 3 fossil setup with Etheric, Corroded, and Faceted. This gives you an average craft completion in 9 tries, which is pretty decent. So once you hit the 2 mods that you want, which are the +1 to Socketed and the Cast on Critical Strike, you just lock your prefixes by crafting prefixes not be changed. You scour that off. You then multi-mod on +2 support and whatever else, whatever other suffix you want. We're using critical strike chance right now because this bow is a friend of mine's. I'm actually so over crit capped that this doesn't matter. I could have like a different suffix if I want, and I'm trying to get a different suffix on the other bow, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. The rest of the gear is pretty simple. It's just rares, crit multi where you can, rares, life, resistances, lots of life and resistances. It's important to have one really good accuracy roll somewhere. If you don't have like a really good accuracy roll on your gloves or your ring, you can struggle to cap accuracy. And then the last piece of gear that's worth talking about is the boots here. So these boots are not best in slot. They're really good, but we're not currently using Aspect of the Spider. That's kind of like a relic from the self-cast version. Ideally, you would want to Woke Orb these with Tailwind boots. So you have both Tailwind, Fizz's extra fire, and then hopefully like life and move speed and a resistance if you're lucky. But if you're not lucky, then just, you know, Tailwind, Physics Fire, and some move speed. But yeah, that would be the ideal perfect boots. Cluster Jewels. This is a terrible Cluster Jewel. I'll probably update the POB with a new Cluster Jewel before I post it again, because this is also a relic of the Self-Caster version. The medium is good. Magnifier, Vast Power, some area damage, some AoE, some crit multi. Watcher's Eye. We use crit multi for precision, critical strike chance for zealotry on our watchers. And then of course we're using an interrogation gear. We're also using a militant. Wait, is this passive tree stuff? I guess we're moving into passive tree stuff. All right, so let's just move into the passive tree. Start over. We're an assassin. We take ambush and assassinate, we take opportunistic, we take unstable infusion, we take deadly infusion. Alright, this right here. Let's talk about the timeless rule. Militant Faith. So the way that Militant Faith works, it has 2 explicit mods that are scaled based on devotion, and devotion is given to you by like the travel nodes and the small nodes in its radius. In addition to that, the Dominus Militant Faith keystone gives you Inner Conviction. Now, since we don't generate frenzy charges on this build, Inner Conviction lets us scale spell damage off of our power charges, giving us 3% more per. And we have 6 power charges, so that's, you know, a relatively large amount of spell damage, which is really, really good. As for explicit mods, area damage, elemental damage, effect of non-damaging elements is really good because we use Scorch in this build. Crit multi, critical strike chance, crit multi, power charge. This right here, extra Thread of Hope, we use this to pick up Heart of Flame, which is some fire damage. We use it to pick up Disciple of the Forbidden, which is a minimum power charge. It's also power charge on kill. We use it to pick up this crit multi per power charge, and we use it to pick up this critical strike chance per power charge. All very good. We also use it to pick up Firewalker, hilariously, which is, again, just some more fire damage. And I think that's it for the passive tree. Rare jewels, just attack speed, crit multi, life. Attack speed, crit multi, life. Attack speed, crit multi, life. Over here, for mediums, we use area damage mediums. Just get like a little bit of crit multi, a little bit AoE, a little bit of area damage, and Watcher's Eye, which I already talked about. Of course, Secrets of Suffering. As for the large cluster jewel, you can use spell damage. Spell damage is kind of meh. You want a fire damage one with 3 notables. The biggest notable I'd say is... I can't remember what it's called. Corpse Destruction. I'll edit it in. I'll edit it into the video. And I'll also edit the POB so it has the correct cluster jewel. It's just a little bit more money that I'm willing to spend. I always try to make my builds very, 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 very budget so that I can afford more memes. So this is the incorrect cluster jewel for this build, but whatever, we're using it. All right, so let's go ahead and talk. About ways that we can min-max the build past where it's already at, just to push the damage a bit farther. We already talked about the Tailwind Fizz Extra Fire Boots that we would like to Woke Orb. The next thing that would be really good is a Shaper cooldown recovery Stygian Vise. Now, pure Shaper Stygian Vises aren't a thing this league. They were a thing last league. They're not a thing this league. We would have to Woke Orb it with something else to get it. Most likely Hunter % life. But again, that would be really good because it would decrease the internal cooldown of our cast on critical strike chance. And then we could tune our attack speed to that new cooldown and get a bit more damage. Essence of Hysteria, where are you at? So rings. Rings are interesting because we have some space on our rings for prefixes that we wouldn't be using otherwise. We can use Essence of Hysteria. Now, Essence of Hysteria, when used on rings, have 10% Fizz's extra fire, which is a decent chunk of more damage for our build. So like a Fizz's extra fire ring over here, a Fizz's extra fire ring over here would be amazing. Now also, another thing that's really honestly very achievable is a Corrupted Admiral with a very good implicit, like a +1 max res, a % increased damage, or like a +1 to socketed gems. Each of those helps in its own way. But since we don't need a 6-link, it's very easy to just buy an Admiral off of the market that already has the corruption that you want, and then just force it to the bench because it's only 350 jewelers for the 6-socket, and then you just need it to be 4-linked, which is relatively cheap. So again, very easy to get the stats that you want on like a Corrupted Admiral, very easy to actually plan for that to be in the build. Min-maxing the bow. Obviously, Spine Bow is the best like quality of life. I talked about how you could use a Mariketh. I'm going for an Assassin Bow for crit multi. Ideally, +1 socketed gems, 20 cast on crit, +2 socketed support. But the other modifiers past that are kind of up in the air. I really want to do something with Fire Burst, which is also Essence of Hysteria. But to craft a bow like that and not take like 27,000 essences to do it, we'll probably end up using a... Now to craft a bow that has like all the mods you want, plus like the fire burst off of Essence of Hysteria, we use the same crafting method. We use Etheric Corroded Faceted, but we also throw in Glyphic. This has a 1 in 4 chance of giving us the fire burst on hit mod. That's really, really fun. So yeah, that's going to be my next project. But again, that's going to be decently expensive. Again, you're rated to hit it in like 9 tries with like 65% confidence. However, prime resonators and glyphic fossils, and actually faceted fossils are quite expensive too. I think they're actually at 20C right now. So, you know, it's about 1,000 chaos crafting projects. So, you know, a good day's worth of crafting. But we should have that sometime soon. Those are my only real thoughts on how to min-max the build. Obviously, something like a Fizz's Extra Fire Quiver, if you really want to spend money on it, would be insane. Something like extra fire damage, if you've killed recently, is really good. Stuff like an enchanted belt with like I don't know, like a critical strike chance enchant. I forget what the spellcaster belt's enchant is. Pretty decent though. I think it just helps cap critical strike chance. I can't remember. Yeah. Min-max. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the skill gem setup. So our trigger gem is Anomalous Blast Rain. This is what we use to trigger our cast on critical strike. We use Anomalous because it has % chance to cover enemies in ash on hit, which is very powerful for a fire build. It's 20% increased fire damage taken, lasts for 4 seconds. It's only 4% chance, but with as much as we hit, we will have it up on bosses at least some of the time. It's all around just nice. This is like half of a support gem in addition to being our trigger. We use Purifying Flame. This is actually not the version we're supposed to be using for maximum damage. I believe it's Divergent, as increased the damage to enemies on consecrated ground. It's like 5% or something like that. 5% more damage. I couldn't find a 21 one of those for like a decent price. So this is the gem I'm using for now. Awaken added fire damage support. This is insane because of the bow, the +2 support gems. And the +1, this ends up being level 8, which is an insane amount of damage. It's absolutely absurd amount of damage. Also, with the +1 level off of this, it brings our Purifying Flame up to 29, which is crazy. Increased critical strike support. This is actually not best in slot, and right now we're over crit capped on this build without like a diamond or a bottled faith. So ideally, if we wanted like a better link here, we would get a diamond and a bottled faith, and we would drop this for controlled destruction or awakened controlled destruction for an insane amount of more damage. But for right now, just for quality of life, we're just sticking with the increased critical strike support because we don't really need more damage for the time being. And then of course, Inspiration. This is just a great support gem with no downsides. And then Empower. Empower is really, really, really good for Purifying Flame. Really good. It just also scales so hard with the bow. This is level 7. This is +6 for Purifying Flame, which is crazy. In our helm, this is the next important setup. These are all of our support spells that we trigger with Asness. We have Frostbite. We have Elemental Weakness. Again, we're using Admiral, so we're targeting cold resistance. So those two are very important together. They are 88% minus max resistances, or minus total resistances, sorry. And then we use Frostbomb for the 25% cold exposure. For a source of exposure. This is also less life regen, which is very good. And then we use Summon Ice Golem, which has accuracy on it, which is very good. Critical strike chance, which is very good. At some point, I will get a buff effect Ice Golem. I'm lazy though, but sometime in the future that will happen. For the boots, Zealotry, self-explanatory. Arcane Surge, Smoke Mine, Flame Dash. Smoke Mine is not necessary here. In fact, you could get rid of Smoke Mine and put in Second Wind if you really, really wanted to. I just really like the feel of Smoke Mine into Flame Dash animation canceling. Like my favorite way to move around the map. So I kind of stick with that. But you could totally get rid of Smoke Mine here. Gloves are more auras. We use Precision for the accuracy, critical strike chance. The accuracy is very important. You need to get all of the accuracy you can. And then we use Herald of Ash, and we use Divergent Blood and Sand linked to Enhance. And the reason for this being, Herald of Ash on its basic quality gives buff grants increased fire damage, which can be increased by Enhance. And then Divergent Blood and Sand on its quality gives area damage while in Blood Stance, and area of effect while in Sand Stance, which both scale our damage and our AoE, depending on which stance you're in, and which are scaled by Enhance. And neither of these have a relatively high mana reservation, and Enhance has a really low mana multiplier, so we can get away with linking these to Enhance for a little bit of extra damage for basically free. For the big one, the chest armor. Divergent Animate Guardian. Now we use Divergent for additional increased maximum minion life. This is very important. It's very hard to get minion life on this build. Very, very hard to get minion life. Until you have like your full Animate Guardian setup, he will die all the time. So I would recommend not actually using Animate Guardian until you have all of the gems leveled, all of the items in place, and are absolutely sure that he will not die till like anything that's not like a Cyrus Storm. Use Anomalous Minion Life for the regen. The regen's very good. Meat Shield for less damage taken. This also makes him defensive. He'll kind of stick near us, which is nice because he has Victorios on him, which gives us a little bit more move speed in maps. And then of course Empower. This should be an Empower 4, but right now it's just Empower 3. Divergent Convocation. We use this to keep our Animate Guardian alive. We also use this to unnerve enemies, which is 10% increased damage taken, spell damage taken. So this kind of doubles as our left click. Whenever we're nearby enemies, we can bring our Animate Guardian to us, heal him a little bit, and then he'll also will also deal a little bit more damage for the time being. And then Righteous Fire. Righteous Fire is just for single target. We just use the Vol Righteous Fire version. Let's talk a little bit about the gear that we use on the Kingmaker itself, because I got a lot of questions about this on the actual video. And yeah, so we use Eye of Malice for the helm, of course. That's also the other part of the build. We're not wearing ourselves. We use it on our Animate Guardian. We use Growthcoil's Pelt for a large amount of % life regen. If you're worried about your Animate Guardian dying, don't use Growthcoil's. Just use a rare with some regen on it, and they'll be fine, probably. We use a Kingmaker as well for crit multi, Coaling Strike. If you're worried about him dying, don't use a Kingmaker. It's really expensive. Use a Dying Breath. Dying Breath's curse effect has allies have increased damage in general, and is also like 300 times cheaper than Kingmaker is. For boots, we use Victorio's Flight. They are just a little bit of allies have increased movement speed. You can get Victorio's Flight with regen on them if you've been hit recently from lab. It's worth doing if you're scared about him dying. I, at this point, am pretty confident that my Animate Guardian won't die, save to like me being dumb, but he hasn't died in a long time, so yeah. Anyway, you can't get % regen. And then of course for gloves, you just use Southbound. Southbound have a large amount of life on them. You can get life on the implicit as well if you want to get like corrupted ones. They're just really, really good. % life is amazing for Animate Guardian. Resistances, if you wanted to get like a rare with like tri-res, like really, really high tri-res, it could be an option. So anyway, yeah, that's the Animate Guardian. Don't get him killed. So in the other video at the end, I mentioned that you could swap out Purifying Flame for basically any kind of spell that you wanted to play, and it would work. And for the most part, that is true. For any kind of like cold spell that you wanted to play, just swap in Anomalous Cold to Fire instead of Awaken Added Fire Damage support, and swap in Pyre for one of your rings. That'll give you 100% Cold to Fire conversion. You can then just keep the same setup across for everything. For Glacial Cascade, keep Signal Fire for every other cold spell. Swap out Signal Fire for like a quiver, like a rare one with like life and crit multi, and attack speed. For lightning spells, don't use lightning spells. Well, I guess you could, but Doriani's is just like Doriani's prototype is just this build but better for lightning spells. I don't know, if you're gonna do lightning, I would recommend just building like a Doriani's something. Don't play lightning spells with this. It's not gonna feel great. Unless you have like 2 Call of the Brotherhoods. But even then, it's just, I don't know, don't go that far. Firestorm is really, really fun. Firestorm does like no single target. Volatile Dead was one of the ones I showed in the video. For Volatile Dead, just swap out your Ice Golem for Desecrate in your helm. So you have like corpses to target. And swap out Awaken Added Fire Damage support for Awaken Spell Cascade. And I think that's really all of the really, really good ones. There's like some other meme stuff you can play, like Freezing Pulse and whatnot, but it's not that crazy. Blazing Salvo. Blazing Salvo is really, really good. Swap out Awaken Added Fire Damage support for just like Controlled Destruction. Put in Blazing Salvo. Put Flame Wall in instead of Ice Golem. So you have like the extra damage from that. And yeah. Blazing Salvo. Closing thoughts. Is there anything else I wanted to say? I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I don't know. This build is fun as hell to play. I really recommend playing this. It's cheap. It's really cheap to gear too. Because you really only need like the bow. It's like the only really expensive part. It only costs a few extra craft. So, shrug. But yeah. That's it. That's all I got.